So when it comes to the database, how will we structure the data of our app so that then we can build an interface on top? We will be having one table for users. I always recommend to have that, and I always start with that because that's where we'll have one field for their user email, one field for their name, but also their role. But we will then also be able to connect users to other objects of our app. And our app will feature an object for contacts, for companies, and for deals. So this is very typical for B2B setups where you want to connect, maybe to link multiple contacts. So let's say the head of procurement, the CFO, and another stakeholder will be three contacts that work at the same company. So we really want different objects and not try to fit in emails in the company object because then it's difficult to handle multiple contacts. And then deals is whenever there is a commercial opportunity with a company, we will be creating a deal. And the reason to have its own object is that can have one company that has multiple deals. So for example, they had maybe a deal for first a pilot of the project that had a low amount, and then they're already negotiating the next deal. So both should coexist, and that's why we have its own objects. And I have then added two more objects, one for tasks and interactions, that are more related to, relationship management. So interactions in there will have one record, so one row per, for example, email exchange or per meeting that we had with them. So we can really store everything that happened with also a timestamp of when it happens. Then able to go back and either read through that or have AI help us understand the past interactions with contacts, but we'll also be able to find ways to bring that data into the deals and consolidate them so that we can also have some AI-powered insights that would maybe summarize at the deal level all the interactions we have had with all the contacts that are related to this deal. And lastly, the tasks. So this will be more for the team to actually manage their to-do. And for example, a task could be to follow up with one of the contacts after they submitted a demo request. Could be maybe to follow up once more once we have the confirmation from our finance department about the quote we were about to send. So these 6 objects compose our database, and the power of relational database like Softr database is that we will be able to very easily interconnect them in a very scalable way so that we are ready to build an interface on top of this database. Let's jump right into the database design. So first we can see that I had prepared already a very detailed list of all the fields that I will be needing for each object. For example, the deal amount. I know that it will be important for me to add such property for deals or the date it's supposed to close, or for interactions, the date of the interaction. These are all here. I have listed all the potential properties, so columns for each of these tables. So let's get into it. So I'm now in the Softr Studio, and I will be starting by hitting create an app, and I will choose a Softr database as the data source. You could be connecting any of these data sources or even any service that has a REST API. In our case, we will go for Softr databases because it is what will bring the best performance when it comes to connecting that to your interface. But definitely, if you have your data in Notion base or Airtable, you could also be connecting right on top of this database. So let's get started. So Softr will automatically create some first blocks and pages, such as this very useful utility pages. And right now, so that is a dynamic block, and I will just, actually be connecting that to a database that's actually a new one. So we are able here to start from scratch and to directly connect one block of our interface to this database. I'll start by giving a clear name to my app, but also to the database. So these are really two components, the app and the database, these tabs that we see here. Perfect. And now I will want to add one table per object that we had here. So I'll be starting with users, and I'll just rename that users. Then we had contacts, Then, yeah, companies, deals, interactions. And the last one is tasks. All right, so we've got our 6 tables, which match our 6 objects here. And what we have to do is 2 things. First, to create all the fields for each of our tables. And then we'll also be creating these connections between the tables. And we'll see that it's actually made quite easy. The first column is always what we call the primary column. And here it's recommended to go for a column where the values will be quite unique. So for users, I always go for email because it's quite a safe, unique identifier. 2 people cannot have the same emails. I'll go for that. And here, the type of field, I go for email as well. Then I will not be needing these 2. Perfect. And now I'll be adding a short text. So here, that's the place where you select the type of field first. So I'll go for text and I'll go for full name. Perfect. Then we say that we want our users to have different roles, and that's why we'll here use a select, because we will decide which are the different options for that field role. And here as options, I will add admin and I will add sales reps. Perfect. So here we see that we'll then have the choice between these 2 options. We can also be adding as a file here an avatar, where we'll have the profile picture of our team. It will appear in some places of the interface. And we will now create a related record. We'll go in here in relations and create a related record, which will be a connection to one of our tables. And here I will call that maybe assigned contacts. And I will say that it is related to the table contacts. And this way, if I have, let's say, if I have a contact here, I will be able to link to this record, which will really bring this connection together. And we see that we already got an automated field that does that kind of mirrors the connection that we started to create. Then we will add some more relations. If we look at here, we had a connection to contacts, to deals, and to tasks. So let's do that. Perfect. Last thing that I will add is the record ID. It might be in the future when we build the interface, it might be useful to have the record ID somewhere. A record ID, basically what we call a record in Softr databases, is actually a row of our database. So each row has a unique identifier that enables, even if we had, for example, twice the same name here, which would make it difficult to know which row we are actually referring to when we say, yeah, we want to identify only one. We would be using this because it will absolutely be unique in the whole column. Even if we have 10,000 rows in there, this will always be unique. Interesting to have it here. Yeah, so for now, let's add a few dummy data in here, which will be the baseline for us to test the interface, to test the app. So we'll be adding some emails, some avatar. All right, so we got a bit of data in there, and we can now move on to the next table that we'll create. So I'll get rid of these 2 columns, and we will start here again. I want an email because these are the contacts, like our prospects we'll have for sure an email. Then it has been automatically created here. And what will happen is that we will actually call that contact owner. Yeah, because that's where we would define who is the user, so the sales rep mostly, who is owning that contact. I'll be then adding some more fields, for example, first name, last name as well. Maybe what would be interesting to have in a CRM is a job title to understand when we're talking to. We'll also be adding a phone number. Here we have a dedicated field type for a phone number. And we will also want, if you remember here, our contacts need to be connected to companies so we know where they're working. So I'll add again a related record, company, and yeah, map it to this table. Perfect. What I will adding though is here, I will prevent a contact to be mapped to two different companies, because in the context of this CRM, we're considering that a contact can only be assigned to one company. And if we want to reorganize, we can also just drag and drop our columns. I'll be adding another related records because we saw that they had to be connected to interactions. So again, all the emails, for example, that we have exchanged with them. So this time there can be multiple interactions. So I'm keeping that toggle on. And yeah, that will be it for now. Moving to the companies, we'll keep here this text field. Maybe we name it company name. All those. So we automatically have here the link to contacts, and that's perfect. So here we'll be adding a URL type of field because we want to store the websites of that company. And we will then add a select field where we will have a value for their industry. This, having it as a select field here, will enable us later in the interface to, for example, offer a filter for the users to maybe find all the companies that are assigned to a specific country, which can be super useful. So let's add here our own taxonomy of industries. And you understand that the value of, creating your own CRM also in the personalization that you can have, because you are not stuck with a list of industries that doesn't really match your way of categorizing your prospects. Here, it's really useful. And now is where it gets really interesting. Within our database, there are some fields where the input will be, for example, manual. We'll get their company name from the form that we'll be filling or something like that. But there is also some elements that we don't want to be looking for manually, but we want some help of AI and web search to actually bring in some more insights about, for example, here, a company. So we'll be adding here an AI agent field, which is something unique to Softr database, because you can be automatically generating under the conditions that you want. For example, whenever a record is being created, some insights that are based on AI. So what we will want here is, for example, a research. So this will help us to get, let's say, the activity description. So that's the place where we'll write our AI prompt. So we want 3 very concise bullet points telling about the activity company. And here I can just hit the add sign or click here to map here the company name. And I can also say which website is, and we will also link the website. What I will also do here is now allow for web search. And thanks to the company name and the websites, this AI agent will be able to find online information to actually respect here our guidelines. I can even have here some AI that will improve my prompt, because here I really wrote down the fundamentals. But yeah, this sounds like an even better prompt. And now I can decide when exactly this AI agent should be running. I don't want it to be running whenever a record is created, but really when we have a website that is available. Yeah. And let's say we also want, if our sales reps also know and research the company manually themselves, they can also manually edit this value. So let's take a look at how it would work. So if I add a company named IBM, so I'm adding the company name because here we have mapped that field. And if I say IBM.com, I guess, it will here automatically run and get our insights. And what we have here is the 3 bullet points that we asked for. So it seems like we need to be even more precise about the formatting, so we can just refine our prompt. We can say return the bullet points in the formats to then have the perfect prompt that will return what we asked for. Perfect. Here I'll just include a bit. Perfect. So that's some data that's being automatically generated. And we could have another one. I will just duplicate that. This time, what we will want is a number, and it will be number of employees. And this time, for the company, which website is this? Return the most accurate number of employees you will find online. Let's see if we can also improve that prompt, but I think this was already clear enough. And if we run that, we hopefully will have AI giving us, maybe not on the internet, you never find the exact number of employees, but you can have a good idea to understand if it's actually enterprise or an SMB. And in our case, it's very clear. Let's try if we add a Softr. And here, this is actually quite accurate, and we'll also have our activity description coming up here. Exactly, perfect. So as you see, we can really multiply the relevance of our database with fields that don't need to be filled manually, which is game changing. So now we already have our connection, our link to the contacts table. We'll be adding here a related record, so a connection between companies and deals this time. Because as we said, we want to eventually have multiple deals for one single company. That's the reality of business. You don't always have one-on-one relation. And what we want to be adding here is also another native field here from Softr. It is the created at. We have an automated timestamp of the moment the row was created. So if I add one here, it would automatically get timestamp of our row, which will be useful for the admin to know how many companies are being created every month. We can then pull a chart based on that field. So we have our data structure here ready for companies. I'll now move on to deals. So here, the connection to users was actually what we can call a deal owner. And here, companies, it's actually company, and we will only allow to link to one record in our CRM, because we will not have cases where one deal is related to multiple companies. So now we'll have the typical deal properties. So we'll have a number field that will be the amount, and we'll call it ARR, the amount of annual recurring revenue that this deal would be. Yeah. And let's actually make it currency in US dollars. Perfect, because this is even more specialized than number. If we say 10,000 here, it would automatically be nicely formatted. Then what we need is, for deals, we want a pipeline. So we definitely want some stages to help us know the status of this deal. I'll go for a select field here, and we will call that deal stage, for example. And here add all the properties we need. So let's say we need something like a new opportunity, negotiation, closed won, closed lost. Pretty simple, but you could definitely add more granularity. In our case, new opportunity will be that we just got the demo request from that prospect, and negotiation means that we have started to get back to them and to be in conversation, and then the outcome is either winning the deal or losing it. So we can also keep track of all the opportunities that we lost and also get some nice analytics based on that. And because our CRM has the particularity here, as we saw, to directly host a demo request form to get our prospects submitting this request. So in many use cases, this form would actually be on your website. But basically, we will also add here a text field for the demo request email, the demo request first name, demo request last name. We'll have in a long text this time the demo request message. This is a way that we're building this CRM. You could also have a separate object for demo request, but in this context, we will consider that every single demo request automatically creates a deal, and we will then simply have those as a field here. And what we will do later is that we'll create an automation that will take this email and then directly check whether we already have this email as a contact. And if so, then it will make the connection, or if not, it will actually create this new contact and create the related company. I'll also add here this time a date field, demo requests date with the time as well. What we can also add related to managing the deal would be also date fields. That would be the close date. So the exact date that we are either supposed to close if it's in the future, or if the deal isn't won or lost yet, or the date it actually closed if we are in a context of close one. So then it could be interesting to have, as we had planned, relation to the tasks, because we'll manage tasks at the deal level and say, okay, there is something to do for that specific deal. So we'll be creating that connection here. We'll also add, just in case, a file field here. Yeah, just to store any documents, for example, quotes or slide decks. So the team has a place to store some documents. What I would like to achieve is to have here, maybe in a long text, it would be digest of, or interactions digest. And that would be based on all the interactions of this company. Now there would be two ways to build that. Either in here with the formula, we compose the full content. So for example, if we have an email here, so we could then create a formula that puts the name of the interaction and the description into one field so that we are able to look it up from here and then basically, pull all this data at this level. But actually, I think we will be building that with an automation so that at the deal level, we will have a button that whenever we click, it will go and find all the interactions that are connected to this deal through the contacts and do a summary to get a really good understanding of like, where do we stand if we read through these interactions? What is the real status of this deal, and what could be the next steps? And we would have AI-powered insights. Here, we will actually not build it through an AI agent, but it will be a field here that will be automatically filled through an automation. That is a concept that we'll see and cover later. Okay, and lastly, we will add also created at field, and eventually another, last updated at, so that we have this. Maybe what we have missed is that here there is the message that they wrote when we received the demo request, but we could also add maybe in here a long text that is deal description, where we will be able to write they want product XYZ, use cases, etc. So I think that right now we have a very good structure for our deals where we have all information that we need, that we can then also either fill with automations or also display in our interface. So let's move to the interactions part. And so this will give it a title. We'll have, so no status, but we'll have select field, which will be the type. And one option is email. One is, let's say, a meeting. And we could be adding, for example, call or a note, etc. Right now, we will just focus on these two. So description will be more actually the content. So if it's an email, we'll have, for example, a subject, follow up on our meeting, and then body, etc. So we can nicely present those. We can also have select for the direction, either inbound, we have received it, or outbound. And here the title, I would, instead of having to either write it, or I will just add a formula here, and I will create the formula. I will have AI help me with that. Display first the direction, then separate with, then type, then up, then the contact. So let's see what we get. Perfect. So I think that with that, if we have a direction, we'll have a title that's automatic. That looks pretty good. What we're missing here is the date timestamp here. Perfect. So we can also be adding the timestamp that we had. So here each title is quite unique as well. And yeah, I think we have now enough to store all these interactions. And the last table we need to prepare is the tasks. So for tasks, let's give it a title, a description, status. Actually, this is all very relevant. I can even change here the color. Perfect. And we already have, the link to the user and to the details. Yeah, our database, the V1 of our database for our AI CRM is ready. We see that we have a very good data structure, for example, with those interactions, because they are well connected to the other objects and they are well documented. I would say that this database is now AI ready because we will be able to build a lot on top of that. We'll be able to build eventually some more either database agents, but also workflows that will be getting some information and either filling new fields or sending emails, etc. So what we could do is indeed to add some more data here, so it starts to look better like a CRM that's being used and maintained, but the skeleton is definitely there. So I'll be now bring some more data in, so we're ready to move to the interface building phase. So I have now added some more placeholder data so we can really get started to build the interface.